This is what matters. This is what we're capable of. The mutts that we are, all of us from somewhere else. And New Orleans demonstrates that in a way that no other city, that does it in the street in a way that no other city in America does.
Hello? Sorry. Hi, my name is Jose. Earlier we asked these questions to Dr. Wilson. One of the questions was, if there was another season, what would be the theme and why? And the other question is, if you can solve one system, what would it be? Would it be political justice system, economic system, or educational system, and why?
The second part of the question was if I could what to a system?
What system would you first aim to solve? Would it be the justice system, political system, educational system, or economical system, and why?
Okay, the second part was scary. If there was another season of The Wire, it would have had to have been after season 3 and before season 4, if that makes sense. So that what was seasons 4 and 5 would have been 5 and 6. It had to end on the media question, which was, the last question was the primal one for the end, which was, if any of what we've done up to this point is true, what were we paying attention to while Rome burned? You know, where was the media culture screaming that the sky is falling if the sky was really falling? And so that had to be the last question. And because that was linked to the Marlowe storyline, which was a 2-year arc, those 2 seasons would have to end. But in the interim, if we'd have thought of it in time and been able to research it in time without keeping the show off the air for 2 years, because we didn't think of it in time, it would have been immigration. Because Southeast Baltimore has a very small Latino population until recently. In the last 10, 15 years, the area around Upper Broadway has exploded and become very vibrant with Central Americans. And that to me is fascinating. Obviously, immigration is a fault line in American society in terms of the way we deal with it and our own foibles, being a nation of immigrants, yet terrified of the process. There was a lot there to discuss, and I'll have to find another way. But it was a great idea. It was David Mills's idea, actually. If he'd have thought of it 9 months earlier, before we'd finished the research on the school stuff, we might have been able to rush, flip it in. But provided HBO was willing to go a 6th season, which, believe me, they were generous. I mean, we weren't exactly killing them with the numbers. As far as what would I adjust, one of the things that I'm really aware of is what the limitations of my role. My role is come to the campfire with a story you care about telling, tell it as best you can, try to hold everybody's attention, try to get off stage before you start falling on your ass. It's all the rules of, leave them wanting more. It's all the rules of showbiz. But it's basically rooted in journalism, which is, I like it if the story really reflects what I think might actually be happening, which, hey, take a shot, It may not be truth, but it's the closest I can get with what I got. But I'm aware that telling a story is the extent of my ability, or the extent of my responsibility, I should say. Policy, it's for somebody else to come and look at the stories. I think this is the same for academics. I mean, this is an interesting question to pose to Dr. Wilson, which is, you try to explain what's going on in the world. And nobody more than he has been absolutely deliberate about trying to empirically make clear what's happening with the urban poor and what our choices as a society are. And you send those babies out in the world and you hope they'll toddle off and they won't get hit by a car and they'll make it to the other side of the street. But you can't control it. Behind all the effort to tell a story well and to be honest with it, they could pass a worse law. Here's a story. The guy who was mayor, who wanted to be mayor at the time the book The Corner came out, The Corner's an argument against the drug war. It's very dry, it's very careful. It doesn't say that on the first page because then I thought I would lose you don't want to preach to the choir. But it basically says this is not working. Sure enough, guy's running for mayor, goes out to the corner, Monroe and Fayette, where we wrote the book, holds it up, says, I will take back these corners. I will get tough in the war on drugs. Make me mayor. And they did. And then they made him governor. He's now the governor of Maryland. And one time I had him on the phone, I said, you know, and he was talking to me about all the wonderful drug war stuff he'd done, and I said, Mr. Mayor, did you read the book? And he said, no, but I know what it's about. You know, it doesn't matter what it's about. He held it up, and he did what he wanted to do. And ultimately, do I wish I had not wasted my time on the story, or do I wish, you know, I had been, you know, my pay grade is my pay grade. His pay grade was to do whatever it is he does, you know. And if I start trying to, all I can do is say what I think. If I start trying to go beyond that, it starts becoming little crusades out, you know, external to the right. Then I'm sort of lost track of what I do well, which is tell a story. So what would I adjust first? I don't know. I'd probably, I don't know, go to work on the postal service. Don't, you know, not good. Not good for me to even embrace the thought process.
Back there on the blue shirt.
So, 3 questions.
Oh, great.
Any history on the expression? Any history in the expression "those yos"? Like in Baltimore, they say "those yos."
Yeah, that was a term of derogation that you heard from corner boy to corner boy. Actually, it wasn't. It was a term of affection from corner boy to corner boy. Yo, it was actually a noun. Started popping up in the early 80s. Yo said this, yo said that. It was a way of referencing somebody without using their proper name, which was a very good way of being if you were on a drug corner, because yo is indefinable. It's kind of like the white T-shirt. You know what the white T-shirt is, right? You go to a drug corner and 29 kids are wearing long white T-shirts, playing white tees. Because when you get to running, the police description comes out, it's, you know, black kid in a white tee. You know, you're giving them nothing. Well, you know, yo said this, yo said that. It became sort of like wiretap talk for, we know who we're talking about, we ain't gonna use a name. And then the cops picked it up and started saying, you know, yo this or yo boy that. And so it became a term of derogation, and it meant corner boy, but it had sort of a slight racial tinge. You didn't hear black cops saying it so much, the white cops.
And then I guess, where do you personally get your information from these days, from the media? And short of throwing a brick, what can the average person do these days?
Well, I'll go back to the, you know, hope they pick you for a jury, then do the right thing. For that second part, where do I get my news? You know, same place everybody else. I hear something's going on, I Google it. It offers me 792 choices. I usually take the New York Times, if I can find it, or the Guardian, if it's in, you know, I read The Economist. It seems to have a better perspective on the world than other magazines. But, you know, I get the New York Times at home. Can't bear to read the Baltimore Sun, it breaks my heart. I read the Post somewhat. The Post has kind of been hurt lately. The New Yorker, I don't know. And then you hear something's going on and you get on the web like everybody else. Don't get me started on what's going on with journalism. We'll never get out of here. Just start running in circles. It'll be sad to see.
So my name is Cameron, and I got 2 questions actually. One, for those who haven't seen The Wire or who have, which character, I guess, encompasses your whole idea of what the show is meant to be? So like for those who haven't seen it, like which character would you tell them to focus on? And second, when's your next show going to start? Because I would love to be your cameraman.
I can knock you down on the second one real easy. Are you in the union?
I might be.
No. What's the union? Which union is it? The cameraman's union? No, I'm a union shop. I only work union, sorry. But, you know, you get that union card, come see me. Which is the character that most embodies it is Baltimore. Baltimore is a character. There's a reason why in the last episode, the last shot was of Baltimore. We tried to make the city a living, breathing entity. And we were trying to argue that it matters, which is why I was so distressed when you would read reviews and they'd be like, man, I'd get out of Baltimore, you know. So that would be it's not a flippant answer, it's not sort of disrespecting the question, it really is, that's the character I cared about most. Like, by the end, I wanted you to, whether you've been to Baltimore or not, I wanted you to feel for what was at stake.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a broadcasting major about to graduate in May. I was just wondering.
I'm sorry about that asshole magnet. It's what we used to say in Baltimore. I'm sure they're different.
I was just wondering, which medium do you think has the greatest capacity for affecting change?
Well, I would love to say prose. I would love to say books and writing. Books, magazines, whatever. I would love to say prose because it's the most sophisticated. First of all, it has an interior voice. You know, the film cannot have an interior voice by virtue, unless you do voiceover. So it's problematic for telling the stories of human beings with great delicacy. You know, for that you need a modern novel. The horror is that Americans read less and less. If you sell 100,000 hardbacks, you're on the New York Times bestseller list. In a country of 300 million, you know, nobody watches my stuff, and you know, I get 2-3 million on a Sunday night. So, and during the week, during the week I get about 3.5 million. So, and that's terrible by TV standards. So I think the answer has to be film. Film and television have become certainly the preeminent storytelling medium. You know, I'm not sure that's a good thing, but I think that's become true in the second half of the 20th century, and I don't see it changing soon. But you said the capacity for creating change. Well, it does have the capacity to create change. If they ever did with television what you could do with television as an educational medium, it would be fierce. It would be, this goes into, people pay 50, you know, this used to be beamed into our houses for free. Now the average household pays $40, $50, $60 to have the cable hooked up. I mean, we're all on the television tit, and we can't get off. I mean, we're like, just more channels, more. If they ever actually used it for what its potential was, we might be the most educated society in the history of humankind. But then that's another use of your word potential. And you know, for that to have it not be the medium that it's been for most of its life, or to have more of it become something better, man, you got to get rid of the money. Money makes everybody stupid, and it certainly makes television. So the more money, the stupider. If you have a hit on television, there's so much money involved. You have one job, which is to keep that show on television for as long as you possibly can. So if they love Omar, more Omar. It becomes the Omar show. If they love Stringer, Stringer Can't Die. You know, if they don't like this, you know, they show it to groups in a theater, and if they don't like the way she's wearing her hair now, change the hairstyle back. It's about appeasing the viewer rather than saying what needs to be said. That's the culture of television when you have a hit. It's like sustain the franchise at all costs. And there's so much money in it that you almost can't blame them for the behavior. So television could be almost, you know, epically educational and politically confrontational, and could lead to all kinds of dialectics if it were given free rein by people. But there's just too much money. So it's hard to imagine that becomes true. But listen, it's also becoming balkanized and fractured, and now there's an HBO where there wasn't, and now there are other channels that are educational, and there's more programming. You know, some good stuff is slipping through the cracks. Maybe when we get to 300, 400, 500 channels, you know. But then of course we got 3 or 4 people watching each channel, so you know, I don't know. But right now I'd have to say film and television.
You, sir. Yeah, I know you said you didn't really want to touch on journalism, but I might be probably the only journalism major here. So I was just wondering if there's any hope for
guy.
yeah, if there's any hope for the future of the newspaper industry
There is.
and what that might be, and maybe the future of journalism.
There
as
is,
well.
the hope for the future is, the New York Times started saying, if you want the New York Times to stay a good paper and maintain some sense of itself, it costs money. Our product costs money. All the idiocy of the Jeff Jarvises of the world saying information is free couldn't stand up to the simple fact that it costs money to send people to City Hall, to the State House, to Washington, to London, to Paris, to Fallujah, and to have them tell you what's going on in the world. And to have those people be trained, to have them stay on their beats for years, to have them learn sources, how to use sources, not be used by sources, to have them learn what things really mean rather than what people say they mean. That costs money. It costs a lot of money. The newsroom is an expensive thing. And if there's no revenue stream, it's not going to exist very long. So the New York Times, very recently, said, you can take the paper at home, you can take it online. If you take it at home, you can certainly get it online for free, you're already taking it, but you will pay somewhere. We're not giving this shit away for free. And when they did that, it was the end of the beginning for the disaster that befell journalism. But only at the New York Times, because the thing I fear is that even if the Times and the Post do it, and they leave room for other regional papers to start charging online, which any newspaper has to do in order to survive, and even if they get the horse back in the barn door, what makes us think that they won't go running, since a lot of them are still publicly traded companies, even in bankruptcy? The Chicago Tribune, as badly run as it was, as ignorant as it was, that they won't come out of bankruptcy and go rushing up to the arms of the nearest Wall Street analyst and say, you know, we have money again. I mean, what numbers do you want us to make? You know, and rather than put the money back into their newsrooms and into their product and rejuvenate their product and make their product more essential, they'll just run and give the money to Wall Street like every other industry does when Wall Street beckons. And rather than look to the short-term health of long-term health of their industry, they look to the quarterly profit report and the dividend and the corresponding bonus to the CEO. That's what Wall Street has wrought over the last 30 years. You know, I asked this question the other night at another college, because maybe somebody has the answer, somebody who understands the economics of Wall Street better than I do. We all are told that Wall Street is, and market-based capitalism is there for a reason, which is to encourage investment by ordinary people and by other elements in our economy. You believe in a company, you buy stock. The company is able to reinvest, rejuvenate itself, grow. You believe in a sector, you buy into that sector. The sector's able to capitalize. That's the Business 101 theory of why we have Wall Street, why capitalism is structured the way it is. If that's the case, why do we allow people to short sell? Why do we allow put options? Why are you even allowed to do it? If you don't believe in a company, why don't you just vote with your feet? You don't invest. You don't believe in a sector, don't put any money there. Why do we allow these people to bet against companies and sectors? Why do we allow them to create a dynamic where they will create a fund and then bet against it, knowing that the fund is likely to fail, which is, of course, the mortgage bubble in a nutshell? That's not market investment. That's a casino. Except it's a casino with a rigged game. It's just gamesmanship. It's parasitic. You know, why do we allow it? You know, and I've never received a satisfactory answer except that, you know, it's the free market. So even if newspapers get this right, my great fear is then they're going to go running right back to Wall Street. Hey, we're going to have a good quarter. Can I get a bonus? You know, that's been the last. You know, that's been the last 20 years in newspaper. So, but yeah, the one point of optimism is the New York Times is charging online, and their revenue is up. people are paying. They're willing to pay for quality. Who knew? So take that and hope on it.
So we're kind of running down the clock now, so I'm going to point to you.
Your characters seem just so incredibly real and intense in all of your life.
That's very
How do
kind.
you do? Sorry, this whole thing's for praise, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But
I won the awards.
what do you consciously do to make your characters so?
Well, first of all, again, I get to do these.
Yeah.
Oh, he said, what do I do to make the characterizations real? Again, I get to stand up here and be the sort of the front piece on the bow of the ship. But really, in that writer's room were 8 or 9 different people, all of whom have done a lifetime of research. You know, Richard Price, Dennis Lehane, George Pelecanos, novelists operating at the highest levels of their craft, all of which is research fiction. You know, Richard Price doesn't write a book without rolling out in the streets for half a year and meeting people I told this story somewhere today before, but I'll tell it again. This is what writers do when they're on their game. I've admired Richard for years since he wrote The Wanderer, and I got to meet him right when he was publishing Clockers. I was publishing Homicide, and our editor was the same guy, Houghton Mifflin. And because the books were sort of about urban crime, and they were coming out at the same time, and they were both about 600-page doorstops, the editor got us together in New York. It was like a play date. You know, David, this is Richard. Richard, this is David. What do you want to do? Well, this fellow Rodney King got beat up tonight, and it's on the. So let's go to Jersey City and see if there's a riot, because that'll be interesting to see how the police handle it. This is what people like David Simon and Richard Price do with an evening when there's possible civil disturbance. Let's go to Jersey City, see what happens. So we spent the night rolling around, seeing what was going on, and got to know each other a little bit. And years later, he's researching something, and he comes to Baltimore to research a case for his novel Freedom Land. And I'm trying to show off because I admire him so much, and so I've been working on the corner, and we go out into West Baltimore and roll around, and lo and behold, one of the main characters of the book, Gary McCullough, God bless him, is out on the corners, and he's really high. He's just really wired. But I see him, and I flag him down, and we all go to get a soda and talk. And Gary's in the backseat of the car, and we're just talking back and forth. And Gary uses a phrase. He uses a phrase that in Baltimore is fairly common among people of a certain generation. He calls me an apple scrapple, which is just a way of, it's like a special dessert. It's like saying, Anyway, he uses the phrase. And I see Richard sort of twitch in the front seat, like just come alive a little bit. So like 20 minutes later, after Gary's departed, we hadn't rolled like 2 blocks, and Richard just turns to me and goes, apple scrapple, that's a keeper. And that's where it comes from. You're always listening. How people talk, the cadences of rhythm, the cadences of conversation, the rhythms. You see something happen on the street, you want to replicate it, you want to use it in some way. It's all grist for the mill. You hear somebody talk about what they think about something, and it's a unique way of seeing it. If usually you remember it, but if you don't remember it, you're writing it on a cocktail napkin somewhere. And it's not just one guy in the room. It's not just me. It was all those novelists. It was Ed Burns with 20 years of policing and 7 years of teaching school, and Bill Zorzi, who covered government in Baltimore, was probably their best political reporter at the Sun for 20 years. And all of them in the room throwing out the ideas that don't stand up. We would knock stuff down as sometimes we construct a whole storyline, and George Pelecanos would destroy it with one grimace by just saying, I don't know, didn't we do that in season 2? And we'd realize, oh my God, we just wasted a whole day. Thanks, George. But in truth, what he did was he saved us from cliche, and that's, writers don't often get to work in that venue. That was one of the fun things about the Wire was it was communal among writers who were thinking alike and trying to execute in a single, in a communal way. Often it's just you in the room and it's harder, but usually if you're writing a novel, you're writing a lot less than what you need for 60 hours of programming. For 60 hours of programming, you need a full night. And so I'd be remiss if I stood up here and said, well, how are all the characters so real? Well, I'm just that fucking good. I couldn't possibly. And you're often stealing from the real, It's like somebody's heard a story or Omar was based on 3 or 4 guys in Baltimore who robbed drug dealers. Their names are known. Some of them are dead, most of them are still alive. A couple are whereabouts unknown, but they're real guys and their histories are known, and Ed Burns had a couple of them as informants. So we had the stories at our fingertips.
Thank you so much.
That's it. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this honor. I really am quite moved by it. I have to say, I wouldn't trade it for 3 Emmys. No way.
Professor Wilson for flying out to return to Pullman. And finally, I want to thank the members of Greg Cook's sociology class who made wonderful posters and whatever. And of course,